Hello, and welcome to the Cultivating Confidence podcast. I am your host, Dr. Nicole Grams. I am a life coach who specializes in anxiety, health, and human design. And I also happen to be a functional medicine pharmacist. This podcast is a compilation of conversations that I've had with clients and colleagues. So listen in as we explore the mind, body, and soul's confidence in its many forms. All right. So tonight we are talking about believing in yourself. And I think there's a lot of people out there, myself included, for a long time in my life, that a lot of people spend their lives gathering evidence of their own inadequacy. So basically, brain is just constantly thinking about your own shortcomings, how you're not good enough, how you don't know enough, you haven't had enough experience. And then you get an idea somewhere that you want to change something in your life, whether it's like changing fitness habits or improving your nutrition, finding new friends or hobbies or a new job, or literally anything it could be. And that's when brain puts its foot down and decides that you should never do anything ever, and you need to stay exactly where you are, and we can't believe in ourselves because that's scary, right? But at least I said something weird there. Anyway. But yeah, so brain doesn't believe that you can do it. So therefore it makes you less likely to do it. But there are two parts to this hurdle. One, your adult brain, the prefrontal cortex, the front part of your brain, probably won't be on board with something unless it believes that there's at least a chance that you'll achieve it or survive it, or everything will go fine. And if adult brain doesn't believe that that is in place, there's a good chance that you won't attempt it. So for example, if you want to try skydiving, but you never have before, adult brain is probably going to come up with the idea that if, certain conditions are met, like doing training ahead of time, putting gear on, going with an experienced guide, it's very logical. And then it's, safe for you to do. But the second part is your emotional brain, or your toddler brain, your lizard brain, your survival brain, whatever you want to call it. There's lots of different names for it, but it's your amygdala. It's the thing that in the moment makes you second guess everything you're about to do. So day of, even days beforehand, depending on what it is, but day of, you're putting on your gear, you're getting in the plane. When the door opens, your logical brain knows that you've done all the training, the statistics are in your favor. But survival brain throws all of that out the window and presents you with all of the what ifs in life. So the doubt, the fear, the anxiety. Survival brain is trying to keep you safe despite all of the logical preparation you've done. And there's nothing you can do to stop that from happening. We're going to talk a little bit about what you can do to sort of mitigate that experience. But believing in yourself, in my experience at least, is pretty similar. So maybe maybe you are up for a promotion at work. So logically, you're qualified. They wouldn't have hired you if you weren't. On an intellectual level that you'll survive it. And someday you might even grow to love the job. But on the first day, survival brain kicks in, maybe before you get there, and tells you all of the terrible things about yourself. And how inadequate you are for this new position, and how you really don't know what to do. And, a whole laundry list of everything, right? If you want to start a new fitness routine. So logically, you have the time to set aside for this endeavor. You've got the clothes and the shoes, and you know how to do the workouts, or you've got classes you signed up for, or a trainer that you are hiring, all this sort of thing. But after the first week of classes, the motivation fades and you're tired and sore, and brain reminds you about every other time you've quit and how nice it feels to not be sore and tired, right? So how do you believe in yourself enough to take the steps when brain is running its smear campaign against you without bulldozing and gaslighting yourself to get things done, right? Because that only lasts for a week or two at best, at least in my experience again. But my suggestion here is to, first of all, simplify everything that brain is trying to tell you. So remind yourself that brain really does indeed have a smear campaign at the ready at any time it can possibly catch your attention with it. So I like to think of it at like political ads. They cannot be avoided. You can't stop them entirely. You cannot watch TV and somehow they still creep in and they're texting you. They just endlessly will not stop, right? But you can't stop these political ads and the smear campaign that brain has against you. You can't stop them entirely, but you can, once you do see them, once you bring awareness to them, you can turn them down or off, or even just outright laugh at them if you want to, once they're, in your consciousness. So bringing awareness to your thoughts, what exactly is brain saying about you? So actually write it down. That is my strong suggestion, is to actually write it down, at least at first, until you kind of get used to the patterns that brain is going to bring up. So keep going, keep writing until you get to a point where some truth starts coming out. Because when you start writing, brain is going to try to censor things to be nice and polite and logically tell you, this isn't actually true. So just keep going until you get to the core of it. And I'm going to tell you right now that writing it down at first feels very scary. It feels like when you give voice to what's going on in your head, it will be big and real and permanent. And I promise you, it's the exact opposite. When you shine light on the scary sentences that brain is presenting to you, it gives you the opportunity to observe and change them if you want to. So if you let them bounce around in the back of your brain, in the dark basement of your brain, like I often call it, that is where they feel like big, huge, scary, looming monsters, right? But if you shine a flashlight on it, you can see that it's just a tiny little ball of fluff, right? Making a little noise. And once you have some sentences written down, maybe it's something like, I'm nervous to do this because I'm scared that I won't be able to follow through for very long, because all the evidence that I have in my past tells me that I'll quit, right? Or something like, I don't think I'm qualified because I don't have any experience doing it. Well, no kidding, right? It's the first day. Or something like, I'm scared to get involved because I've had my heart broken in the past and I don't feel worthy of love, right? Like those are the deep, dark truths that are underlying that your toddler brain, your emotional brain is trying to keep you from experiencing. So once you have those sentences out, they look like sentences. And just keep in mind that they are sentences that you don't necessarily have to believe, even if they feel true. Like, have you ever considered that? That sentences that brain tells you, you don't actually have to listen. You don't have to believe the sentences, even if they sound like they're facts. They feel true, or if you have any past evidence to support them. You can look at those sentences and say, you know what, brain? I don't have to believe you, and I choose not to believe it. And it can be as simple as that. Even when you feel like you can't believe certain things, like you can't believe in yourself because of all these reasons and all this evidence that you have. But the thing is, you get to believe whatever you want to believe. And believing in yourself definitely falls in that category. So there are people out there that believe a lot of crazy things. At least, a lot of crazy things that seem crazy to me. And to be honest, some of the things that I believe now past me would have been absolutely dumbfounded that I currently have these beliefs, because I was so closed-minded. I guess that is a word. Closed-minded to beliefs that didn't fall within the scope of what I was taught, right? And so many of us don't, and myself included, I didn't investigate those thoughts. I didn't look at those beliefs and question them for a long time in my life. But the only thing that changed was that I decided to change my mind about that. And maybe I got new evidence. Maybe I just decided to question what I had. But I can choose to believe new things. And some of the most impactful things that I now choose to believe, that I did not once believe, I didn't think I could believe it, was that I am worthy, I am capable, I'm a fucking badass, and I believe in myself. Brain really likes to forget about all the past growth, all the accomplishments, and it's something that my brain does all the time. It forgets how far I've come. So when I put some distance between what brain is saying and what the actual situation is, I can, take a step back and observe where I am and look at it from, again, like taking a step back and looking at it from a distance of, okay, what are the actual facts here? How did I get here in my life? Oh my gosh, what am I proud of along the way? And that's really challenging for me when, especially when my coaches call me out on, oh, well, let's have a celebration day if nothing's going too terrible. And I immediately crumble. But my brain doesn't want to look at all the good things. It wants to focus on all the negative things and all of my shortcomings. But yeah, like when I take a step back, I might be absolutely freaking terrified, but also I am so impressed with myself for creating this opportunity in my life. Like, how did I get to this point where this is even an option for me? Right. So just take a moment and consider what it would be like if you didn't believe the smear campaign that brain is running all the time. What would you do if you did believe you could follow through this time, no matter how much evidence you have that you haven't followed through in the past? What would be different if you did think you were qualified or even just pretended you were qualified, right? What would be different? How would you approach it differently? And what would change if you thought you were worthy? And this is where affirmations can come in. If you haven't heard of affirmations, they're like affirmations, like all the positive things that you're supposed to repeat and all this stuff. But like a lot of times it's a stretch to believe affirmations. So if you put an if in front of it, so if I did believe this, it makes it easier to sort of put that thought on like a hat or like a new jacket or something like that. And you don't have to keep that with you, but you can try it on and see what it feels like to really believe that sort of thing. If I did believe I was qualified, if I did believe that I was capable, what would I do? And this is where sometimes the, fake it till you make it can come in handy. But also don't skip the step of honoring what your brain is presenting to you. So we want to neutralize and honor the part of you that wants to keep you small and safe. And don't make the smear campaign a problem, because the more you try to fight the smear campaign, just like political ads, the more you rebel against them, the more they seem to be around, right? But just allowing them to be there without judgment, allowing your brain to present these sentences to you without judging brain for doing so, because it's honestly trying to do its best, right? I often remind myself that it's okay that brain is saying these things. It's okay that brain wants me to avoid risk. It's normal for brain to remind me of my past experiences and mistakes because it wants things to be predictable. And looking to our past is the easiest way to predict what our future will be. And it's the easiest way to stay stuck exactly where you are. But you don't have to make the sentences that brain presents mean anything and mean that you can't do something new now. And you can actually borrow from your future, borrow belief from future self that has achieved these things. So whether it's a job promotion or a new romance, or you want to go skydiving, future you that has accomplished these things knows exactly what to do and how to do. I mean, well, within reason. Sometimes it's just, advice that you can get from future self. But if you slip into the mindset of the person who has achieved these things, the steps, whether you work from where you are now and take the next step, or whether you think, okay, well, when I have achieved this, what was the step before that point, and work backwards until where you are today. Figure out what you can do now and what you can believe about yourself now. What do you think you're capable of, right? So just remember that every single time you have started out with something new, you have not experienced it before. So the first job you ever had, when my first day as a hostess at the restaurant, I was terrified and I had no idea what I was doing. And now, decades later, I can look back on that and say, oh, well, it would be so easy to do that. But it's because I have, hindsight bias of, yeah, I did that. It was totally easy. And like looking back on it, Learning the skills of simply seating people in a restaurant was something that was scary for me at the time. And I totally forget about it every single time, right? Every time I try something new. The first time you fell in love felt scary, and most of us don't stay with that person that we first fell in love with. So experiencing heartbreak and experiencing negative emotion can be part of our past. That doesn't mean that the next person isn't the one for you, right? And it doesn't mean that the person that's the one for you, you won't have your own trials and tribulations along the way. It's going to hurt sometimes if it's love, right? The first diet you ever started probably didn't work out. Most diets don't work out for most people, right? But what if instead of looking at these things as failures of your past, what if you looked at it as evidence that you're on the right path? And what if each incident meant that you were closer to finding the right answer every time? And what if the negative emotions that you experienced along the way were not a problem at all? Every heartbreak you endured wasn't a problem because it's preparing you and teaching you what you actually want in a future partner, right? Nothing will change what happened in the past except what you think and feel about it. And belief in yourself comes from this, like, not necessarily knowing that you can do everything perfectly, but knowing that you'll be able to handle whatever it is that comes your way on this journey of experiencing new things, setting new goals, and growing. So whenever you doubt yourself or find belief in yourself lacking, just remind yourself of what you've been through and how far you've come, and allow yourself to feel pride and accomplishment. Remind yourself that it's normal to have doubts and fears and that it is safe to do it anyway. You don't have to cram down every negative emotion and thought that you've ever had. You don't have to pretend they're not there. You can lay them out with your nice clothes and bring them with you until you are ready to leave them behind. Because as you do this work, you will be ready to leave some of it behind. And it's sort of like leaving a trail in your path, right? Like breadcrumbs, like where have I been? Except those breadcrumbs will get forgotten. And you'll pretend that, oh, you've always been like this, right? But whenever the negative things come up, let them and recognize them for what they are. They're just warnings to pay attention. They're just brain trying to remind you, trying to, hey, poke, hey, remember me, right? I'm scared. And you can do the thing anyway. And you can rinse and repeat as many times as it takes. And before we close for today, I want to take a moment and look at self-belief from a different perspective. What is the benefit of not believing in yourself? If it is really as simple as changing your mind and maybe re-nudging your brain 1,000 times back on the path that you want it to go, because that's what it takes, is repetition after repetition after repetition. But if it is as simple as changing your mind, why would you choose to stay in disbelief? What is the benefit? And there's got to be a benefit. Otherwise, brain wouldn't do it. And it might not be a motivation that makes sense now, but at one point it did. And there's no shame with any of it, right? But most of the time, staying in disbelief of self is easier because you don't have to take any responsibility for anything. And maybe you don't have to put in the work to grow, to learn, to change, and to evolve into a new version of yourself, because that part really sucks. Really bad. There's a lot of grief that happens. There's a lot of emotions that you have to go through and be willing to experience. And if we're being honest, most people are not willing to experience those things at the level that maybe you want to in order to grow as big as you want, right? It is a heck of a lot easier to just stay on the path that you're on and stay exactly where you are, and and to just be content there. It's easier to do that than it is to take out a machete and chop down the vegetation on the side of the path to create your own. And that's like what you're doing when you're growing. You're not taking the same path that you always have. You're breaking new ground on your own. And brain wants to conserve energy, and that machete takes a lot of freaking energy. It's exhausting. There is no shame in staying exactly where you are if that's genuinely what you want. And from even just one more perspective, what happens if you don't believe in yourself? or well, rather what doesn't happen. If it's a new promotion, what happens if you don't take it? What happens if you don't challenge yourself with changing your habits? Who benefits? What if you don't start the business that you want to start? What happens to the people that you wanted to reach? The people that you wanted to help, right? And all you have to do for yourself is decide that you like your own reasons. And they can seem completely selfish and completely greedy. I don't care one way or another, right? It's your choice. You don't even have to tell anybody your reasons, but as long as you are content and honest with yourself, do you think it's a good enough reason to stop you from moving forward? Or is it a reason to compel yourself forward, even if there's fear? Thank you for taking the time to listen in today. Many of you will be able to take the ideas that you've heard and apply them in your daily life, and that's really all you need. That's amazing. But for those of you who could use a little one-on-one help with how to make these things actually work for you in your real life, please reach out. The link to schedule a consult with me is in the show notes. You don't have to do this alone. See you soon.